AI biases and training sets should not be perfection. That's just really unrealistic. If our baseline is humanity, man, give me the algorithms today. I love people, our brains are awesome, but they are a hornet's nest of these really pernicious biases and glitches and things that really get in the way of making effective decisions.
Let's take more questions, but one more point to make about that is often when you combine humans and machines, you can get the best of both worlds.
This is right.
So the kinds of errors that machines make are often very different than the kinds of errors humans make. So for instance, looking at medical images, often machines come up with false positives. They say, hey, this looks like it could be cancer, even when it's not. And the humans are often better at ruling those out. So some of the best processes are to first have the machine screen through lots and lots of images, say, here are the ones we're worried about, and then a human doctor will look at them more carefully. And that combination does better than either the human or the machine working on their own.
And this is a really interesting research area and a great place for companies to get advantage these days. This field of how we combine what minds are good at with what machines are good at is changing very quickly right now because the machine capabilities are changing very quickly. The companies, the organizations that figure out how to bring together what we humans are legitimately really good at, for example, common sense, with what the machines are showing that they're legitimately good at, man, those companies have a big leg up going forward.
So I'm going to check off this thing. Not that we've solved all the risks and concerns, but we've touched on, we want to get into the others. Erica, should we take another question or should we go to the next point? Go ahead.
Let's take another question. This one's from Daniel, and he's asking, how can we use predictive algorithms to improve business strategy?
That's a really good question as well. So there's a company called Infinite Analytics that I'm advising that does exactly that. And what they do is they have these predictive algorithms to help companies choose their products, help customers choose their products. They're kind of like very sophisticated recommender systems. And because of the deep learning approach, they can not only look at the words, they can also recognize different kinds of clothing and different kinds of images and make recommendations based on those. Going forward, I think we're going to have more and more of these predictive algorithms that help people make decisions and make inferences about the future.
So, for example, we hear stories about venture capital firms that are giving algorithms a vote in the investment process. This is one of the most obviously important decisions that a VC firm makes, and they don't want to turn it all the way over to an algorithm, at least not yet, but they do want to have another kind of intelligence looking at these decisions, sifting through huge amounts of data to say, look, over time, did this kind of company with this level of funding, is the history a happy one or an unhappy one? Is the history in this geography a happy one or an unhappy one? They can do that kind of large-scale scanning better and probably cheaper than the humans can. So it's an important voice to have in the discussion.
Let me give you one more example that we write about in the article, the Harvard Business Review article, and that is Sebastian Thrun's company, which is Udacity.
This is a great story.
A great company that you can go to learn more about AI, get nano degrees in it. When people come into Udacity and try and decide which course to take, they have people in chat rooms, human salespeople, that give them advice. Well, Sebastian and his grad student recognized that the transcripts of those chats were training data that you could use to train a bot, train a machine learning algorithm, how to make the right decisions. Some of those transcripts led to sales and said, hey, these people are taking the course. Others, the person just went away.
And what machine learning is really good at is identifying the small differences that might be associated with a successful sale versus a prospective customer that vanished. So
they trained up the system, and indeed it was able to identify the phrases that were more likely to lead to sales. But the next thing is really important. It's really interesting. Instead of trying to have a bot that would just answer all the questions, that wouldn't have been realistic. They had the bot sort of look over the shoulder of the human salespeople and whisper in their ear and say, hey, you might want to try this word or try this phrase. I've seen this kind of question before, and here's an answer that seems to work well. And that improved the efficiency of the humans, actually by about 50%. The humans still handle that long tail of weird questions that the bots had never seen before, but for the current common recurring questions that they had good answers for, the bot would help them. And this is a great example, not only how you can use existing data to create a training set, but also this symbiosis Andy and I were talking about of humans and machines solving the problem better than either of them could separately.
And what I particularly love about this story is that Udacity is a very technology-heavy company founded by one of the pioneers in machine learning. If they thought that sales process was a job that should be given over to a machine, they would have no hesitation about doing that. What they learned instead, though, is they still want that to be a human activity. Even in a super technology-centric company, the sales process, this is an interpersonal process. It's one of the domains that we think automation will take over last, actually. So they kept that a very human process, but they had this fantastic cutting-edge augmentation going on during that process.
Erica, let's take another question.
Another question related to what you're talking about right now is education. A few questions about education. This one's from Diego, and he's asking, what impact does AI have on education?
Well, we were just talking about Udacity, and so there's an example of a company that is teaching people how to use it. But I think that this is overall one of the lagging areas. Although, Sebastian and a few others, Fei Li, and here at MIT, we have MITx. By and large, we're not doing as much with AI to help with education. It could be personalizing the curriculum much more, learning and recommending exactly what kind of answer, what kind of phrase will be helpful in getting someone to understand a particular part of the curriculum. It's a big, big opportunity going forward.
Exactly. There's a lot of lore in education around pedagogy, around how to teach something, around how to keep students interested, how to keep them in school. We can gather a lot of data, and we can actually go test this lore. One thing that I've learned from the work that we did that led to this article in this book is that over and over again, it's not that all the lore that's built up in a domain is wrong, but some of it is. And in some cases, important parts of our folklore around education and pedagogy are actually wrong. Let's go bang on that and use machine learning and AI as a tool.
And this is a data-driven approach. We write a lot about that in our book,
That's
not
right.
as much in the article, but it's not just using AI, but it's using this data-driven mindset where you do A/B testing to learn what works, what doesn't work. You do controlled experiments. Businesses have been thriving by using these techniques. You're probably being experimented on every time you go to a website with slightly different arrangements. But education could do this as well and see which technique works, which one doesn't. At MITx, Anant Agarwal did a bunch of this, and he discovered that rather than giving the lecture first and then the problem set, it turned out to be a lot better when they gave the problem set first and then the lecture, and then people were really motivated to understand what he was trying to teach them about circuit design.
But I think another important aspect of this question about education is a mantra that I've learned from the work that Eric and I have done recently, which is stop teaching people to do things that the machines are already better at.
Yes.
Our educational system is still, I believe, I think you believe too, way too focused on basic skills, on just being able to do rote calculations, on being able to memorize lots of facts and regurgitate them. The machines are better at that stuff now than we are.
They follow instructions, they memorize facts. Let the machines do that, and we should focus on two other big categories. Andy, I've written about this. Creativity, large scale, coming up with new artwork.
Actual eurekas.
Yeah, new entrepreneurial ideas, new scientific discoveries. And the other, probably even bigger category is interpersonal skills, connecting with other humans, to coach them, to motivate them, to care for them, to sell and persuade them. These are human capabilities that we still have a big advantage of.
So I think medical education, for example, should change a lot in the not too distant future if we're in a world, and I think we are in a world, or we'll get there very quickly, where machine learning systems are the world's best diagnosticians of lots of disease. What does that imply for medical education? I think the implications are profound. One of the things I hope is that we emphasize a lot more getting the human being who you're caring for to go along with the plan, comply with the diagnosis, comply with the treatment, and actually get them healthy. Diagnosis is only one part of that, and yet we overvalue this, this amazing, and it is an amazing human skill of diagnosing someone's medical condition. Man, the machines are going to be better at that.
Yeah, and what you're describing reminds me of Iora Health. Yeah. Andy and I started this competition called the Inclusive Innovation Challenge, and we're giving away $1 million. And one of the winners of last year's competition did exactly what Andy's describing. They added a layer of coaches that helped the doctors, but the coaches would work with patients to motivate them to stick with taking the pills when they're supposed to do it, do that exercise, eat the right food, all the things that the human doctor didn't always have the time and, let's face it, the skills to motivate people. But any other questions we got here?
We're getting a lot.
A lot of questions.
Yes.
Okay, let's try and go
So-
through real.
Pick
bang,
one of your
bang.
favorites.
All right,
yeah.
so this one's from Chris.
We'll do a lightning round. We'll try to answer quickly.
All right,
yeah.
sounds good. All right, so this one's from Chris, and he's asking, how do you see AI not just assisting large corporations, but small businesses as well?
This is an awesome question.
Really important.
Because we get this one. Okay, we'll try to answer quickly. This is a really important question. One of the things that Eric and I hear when we go around and talk to people and organizations is this notion that AI is going to lead to these winner-take-all industries, and that the big companies who have all the technology, have the geeks, and have the data are going to basically dominate everything in an AI world. The two of us don't believe that at all. It might be true if you're trying to build the world's best speech recognizer or the world's best natural language processor. Maybe you do need to have the most data and the biggest army of geeks to do that. But if you want to go do machine learning for agriculture, for example, or machine learning for faulty part detection or something, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, they're not interested in that market now. What they would much rather do is give you via the cloud the capability to do that yourself and get good at it. And Eric and I think a lot of new big companies are going to be built up, not because they've got armies of geeks and lots of data, but because they know what problem to go after. Some of those are small companies today. They'll become big companies.
Yeah, here's a diagram we like to use. I love drawing power laws or Pareto curves. That's what this is right here. And let me walk you through it. So if you look at the use cases, there's a few of them, the number 1 or 2 use cases that have lots and lots of value, and that might be coming up with a new vision system or speech recognition system. Yeah, Google, Baidu, Microsoft, they are leaders in that. But Andy was just
I would not challenge them at that field. If Eric and I were going to start a company, that would not be the company that we'd start.
Although it's impressive that Amazon was able to do that pretty well.
So never say never, right?
But they're a pretty big company. So, but there's this long tail out here of other ones that they may not be billion or $10 billion opportunities, but it's sorting through the cucumbers or hiring people for your specific company or understanding the landscape lighting market. And there are lots of people who could develop applications out here using off-the-shelf technologies, medium-sized companies, small companies. You could do it just for one person in a month or two. So that's where a lot of that value is going to be for small and medium-sized businesses.
Yep.
More questions.
All right, so we have, let me see, Chad asking, how do you feel AI will impact the customer journey? How do you feel that AI will impact the customer journey?
I think in a couple of ways. One of them goes to the example that Eric gave a second ago about Udacity. It's going to let people who are assisting the customer along the journey, it's going to let them do a better job because they'll have these digital artificial intelligence coaches in